Well, this was certainly unexpected for a Tuesday, but my shipment is finally here. And so today we are going to unbox, compare, and generally overview the two brand newest expansions to the 2021 Avalon Hill HEROQUEST. This was surprisingly effective, actually, these little cardboard trees. I'm talking about Spirit Queen's Torment and Prophecy of Telor, the quest packs. First thing you're going to notice is, obviously, the brand new, shiny finishes on these boxes. They remind me very much of the foil cards I used to get sometimes uncommonly in superhero trading card packs back before you could buy trading cards and you didn't have to battle other people with the cards themselves. The back of the box is just as shiny as the front, as well as the HEROQUEST logo on the side. The box is shiny all around. This is so cool. I really like it. The camera actually does do it quite a bit of justice. You can really see the reflections of absolutely everything in my room this way. These quest packs were previously exclusive to the Haslab campaign, and I do use that word a bit loosely because it was never really guaranteed that they would only stay in the campaign. And I know I catch flex sometimes for my views, but I still stand by the belief that these absolutely should have gone out to the public. And I'm so glad that Avalon Hill took the steps that they did to get these two in particular out. So here's hoping we see the third quest pack at some point, and let's get to unboxing Prophecy of Telor first. First things first, the size of the box. These boxes for these two expansions are the same size as the Keller's Keep and Return of the Witchlord expansions. All of the dimensions are the same. And this was something that was pretty evident when the foil emboss for Prophecy of Telor was teased in the Avalon Hill Discord. Also, here is your barcode if you needed that for any reason for Prophecy of Telor, and the typical Australia, New Zealand consumer service contact information at the bottom of the box. So let's open this up. We know that we're going to be getting all of the alternate sculpts of the common game system enemies, as well as the Warlock hero and an additional gargoyle that has been given the red material treatment so as to presumably act as the Warlock's demon form. And that is so awesome. We didn't have that previously. Opening the box, see that there's nothing underneath the lid. First thing we are presented with is the Prophecy of Telor quest book. You can believe that this is a different edition than the original Prophecy book because it's going to contain all of the fixes that were necessary in the original due to just all kinds of mistakes. Various errata has been provided in the old inn. But now that the new quest book is out, they'll have to compile a separate list of errata. Hopefully there will be none in this book. The second thing we see is we have all of our minis here in this black candy tray, plastic, lovely. We have our dice, we have cards, just customary for me. I like to lift this tray out to make sure there are no hidden details underneath my boxes. Pretty pointless to do, but I do it anyway. We see that we're going to have our cards, a lot of additional cards that should have come with the Mythic tier version of the game that did not. So we're actually getting more by purchasing this version of the expansion than we would be if we were purchasing the components of the Mythic tier version of the expansion alone. That said, we're getting the new material for our monsters instead of the classic green, gray, and white. We are getting a strange sort of translucent orange material. Now, my camera's picking this up pretty well, but the first thing I want to do is pull out my darling Warlock, and I have something to show you. This material is quite different than the original hero material. This is going to stand out for better or for worse on your table because this material, friends, and mine has a bit of a defect, a bit of black right there on her ribbon tied around her waist. Interesting. This material actually matches the glistening material shown in the prototype images, something that I thought was possibly just a 3D image actually represented the final product really well. There is a glistening property. So you would describe this as a pearlescent material. Here she is compared to my original Mythic tier Warlock. The original Mythic tier Warlock has the exact same material and color as the other heroes that have been introduced thus far, or reintroduced. But this new Warlock, she has a bit of glitter. She has a bit of magic to her. Now, with this material comes a little bit of loss of fidelity at first. You might have to double take or look a little closer to see some of the finer details. Maybe not really a huge issue for anybody out there, but for me, the matte material of the original always seems to communicate the details much faster. And our Mythic tier sculpt of the gargoyle is also presented in this glistening, glittery, somewhat slightly translucent in places material. So again, camera's doing a pretty good job of picking that up. It's pretty accurate. Mine might be just ever so slightly redder, just a shade redder than what's showing up. That might be pretty close though. That might be pretty close. At any rate, this variation of the gargoyle is now available, and we get not one but two, because this is the one that is supposed to represent just the monster form, the bad guy, the one you're going to be fighting alongside all of these other monsters. So let's put these guys on the table and get a nice panoramic shot. So with Prophecy of Telor, we actually get two sculpts of a skeleton, the alternate pose, the alternate sculpt of the zombie, the alternate sculpt of the orc, that is a male presenting orc, the alternate abomination. I actually like this sculpt a lot more. It's really coming at you. The alternate sculpt of the goblins, and I do prefer these quite a bit. Alternate mummy, it's a lot more, I'm gonna get you. And the alternate Dread Warrior. I really like this sculpt as well compared to the original. I like all of the Dread Warriors, but I do really like this sculpt. And let's not forget the Gargoyle and the Gargoyle and the Warlock. Now, minis aren't the only thing we're getting. We're also getting a full complement of heroic dice for combat. We have 6 very orange, very tasty looking dice that come with this. They have the standard face configurations of 3 skulls, 2 white shields, 1 black shield, although there's nothing black about that shield at all. And camera's picking them up pretty well. They do kind of seem, if we're saying flame, I would say candlelight flame more than anything. That's kind of what I get from this color scheme. I've seen memes where people post these and then the Haribo gummy logo, and I have to say, yep, I get it. I totally get it. And although they don't taste very good, they definitely do look like they would taste really sweet. We're going to open up these cards now, and after that, we're going to do a little bit of comparison between the old and new cards. First up, we've got the Warlock's Hero card, followed by the Warlock spells, which include Demon Form, Fear, and Dark Wings. The Warlock's Wand, Potion of Restoration, the Potion of Magic, the Potion of Healing, the Potion of Lesser Healing, the Potion of Battle, equipment cards, and finally, the artifact cards, Spell Scroll Rockskin, Spell Scroll of Lightning Bolt, Spell Scroll of Water of Healing, and Spell Scroll of Heal Body. Finally, we get this super ultra rare exclusive HEROQUEST Prophecy of... Don't worry about that. All right, I'm interested in seeing comparisons between the old and new Warlock stuff. Yeah, at first glance, you might be forgiven for thinking that there aren't any differences at all, but the coloration is slightly different. It's a little more saturated in the retail version of the card. Now, the back of the card does have subtle differences, but the functionality of the card is the same, so it's just a little bit of clarification in the wording, I think. But it does read, the old card, you are the Warlock, a magical artillerist who has bonded with a sinister creature, allowing you to assume its winged form. Let your allies protect you while you deal damage from afar. That text is the exact same on the new card as well. We have the next part, which has changed just slightly. Counts as wizard hero in terms of which weapons, artifacts, and equipment they can use, versus the new wordage, which is the warlock may only use the weapons, artifacts, and equipment usable by the wizard. We also have just a slight stylistic change in reference to the name of the warlock. The W is now capitalized on the new card. Now, as far as the wand equipment card goes, we do have some differences. The cost is the same. The name and the art is the same, although the art is a little bit more zoomed in on the new version of the card. The wordage reads, for the old card, this wand gives you 2 attack dice against any monster you can see. It can be used only by the warlock. Versus, this wand grants you 2 attack dice against any monster in your line of sight. It may only be used by the warlock. It's a small change, but maybe somebody out there would say, aha, I knew it. The old text for Dark Wings reads, cast the spell on an enemy's turn after you have suffered damage. Reduce that damage to 0 and move instantly to any unoccupied square you can see. The new text reads, you may cast this spell on an enemy's turn immediately after you suffer damage to reduce that damage to 0. Instantly move to any unoccupied square you can see. Fear gets similar word changes. The left is the new card, and the right is the old card that came with the Haslab campaign. And then here are the cards for demon form. The right is the Haslab campaign card, and the left is the new retail available card, the new canon. It looks like the Prophecy of Telor quest book was printed with a slightly higher DPI. At least the details look just ever so slightly more crisp to my eye on the new version, the retail available version of the quest book. Let us open it up and see what differences we can see. Now, I know this is just going to be on the nitpick level, but it looks like the newer text has slightly better editing. There's a little bit more attention being paid to the conciseness of the wording. Just as an example, I'm going to read one of the passages from the older version. Now feeling the warmth of the hero who wears it, feeling the rhythm of that beating heart, Melar's dread spirit has begun to awaken. Versus the new text, which is now feeling the warmth and beating heart of the hero who bears the talisman, Melar's dread spirit has begun to awaken. You can kind of see a difference in the quality of the editing. The old text reads that Melar became increasingly rash, while the new text reads, Melar, undone by his haste for power, became increasingly erratic as he was consumed by the power of dread magic. The new version of the quest book removes the numbered bullet points before each point on the left side, which suddenly stop at body points and the rise of Felmark. We've also got a nice footnote on the new Prophecy of Telor content explanation. Italicized terms in the quest notes reference items with corresponding cards found in this quest pack. Example, Potion of Lesser Healing, Rock Skin, Spell Scroll. Capitalized monsters in the quest notes reference monsters with corresponding cards found in the HEROQUEST game system. Examples, Goblin, Orc. I suppose making it more obvious or following the new convention of adding this sort of note with every expansion. Before we continue, I'm just going to throw the probably obvious by now, but still necessary spoiler warning out there. We're going to be looking at a few of the early quests in the expansion because we're going to be analyzing for obvious differences. This is not by any means a complete or thorough examination of every difference that exists between the old and the new version of this expansion, but we are just going to point out a few things to sort of give as examples. So first thing I would note is that the map image is actually slightly bigger. And I would not say that that's completely noticeable unless you are comparing the two books side by side, but it is ever so slightly bigger by maybe a 1/16 of an inch. So that might be helpful with the readability in some cases, especially when details start to get really small on the furniture and the like in the map image. Art choices have been made as well. Instead of the scribbly lines of the old map style, we have more swooshing and calligraphy-like lines that were drawn to make these maps. They seem to taper off in some of the corners. The monster symbols in the new book take up a lot more space on their tile than the monster symbols in the old book. They're just zoomed in. So better readability just all around. Also, it looks like our corridors are markedly grayer than the clear corridors in the old quest book. I guess to give more of a visual distinction, much faster between a corridor and a room. That actually, I think, is really helpful, although I don't think I've seen it done anywhere else yet. And it looks like I've got a bit of a defect. Either the ink smeared, or somebody opened my book to check it for quality and they cut themselves and bled all over my dungeon. Now, there's not a doubt in my mind that Avalon Hill test played and quality controlled and everything else these expansions before they were released the first time, but you know, there is a level of quality control and catching things that sometimes is adequate when you are under pressure and in a certain environment, and then is no longer adequate when you are looking back. And there are many, many more eyes on that product that are catching things and insisting that they should have been caught before they left the production facility in the QC phase, especially. And there's also not a doubt in my mind that they took a lot of these suggestions that were listed in the old inn and from various community members from all around on what corrections should have been made to this expansion and this quest book before reprinting it and making it anew. Quest 2, and there are no major differences, and I didn't expect that there would be. It's not like they're trying to rewrite the quest or anything like that. They're presenting the material as closely as possible as it was presented in the Mythic tier expansion version. They're just making things more clarified, and any rooms that previously didn't have any entrances or anything that required errata or notes from the official Avalon Hill team have now been taken care of, and that stuff is just built into the quest, which does not require you to have a copy of the errata at hand. There are a couple of changes that actually don't make any sense at all. Like in this example for the level 9, the Dread Altar on the left, this is the old version of the quest. The Sorcerer's Table is facing the correct direction. And for some reason in the new version, it is facing towards the wall now. We have a similar situation with the weapons rack, which in the old one was facing into the room, so the weapons were accessible to the monsters and anybody who wanted to search the weapons rack. But in the new one, it is oriented to face towards us, the viewer, and actually away from the monsters. It's not important at all, just a minor detail that I thought was amusing. And here it is for anybody that had their doubts. In Quest 4, the infamous Room D in the quest, the Tower of Turok. We had no way to access Room D from the west, and there's the door. There's the door that should have been there. The door that was heard round the world. In the old version, in the last page, we had an artifact reference that gave us images of all 10 of the cards. And in the new, we have just 4 of those images, as well as text that refers to the cards found in the HEROQUEST game system. That's Prophecy of Telor in a nutshell. A rather large and over-explained nutshell, but nevertheless. And now it's time for the Spirit Queen's Torment quest pack. Again, here is a shot of the barcode, should you require that for any reason. And we're going to open this baby up. Lift the most colorful lid. Nothing secret on the inside. Here's our quest book, and you can bet we're going to compare the old and new quest books for this as well. This one is much more minty refreshing when we open the box. All of our miniatures have this nice blue material. Again, translucent, somehow more fitting in my opinion, and much prettier than the orange. And that is just my opinion. You can see here where it kind of becomes frosted, translucent tips that are colorless at the edges of things like the Dread Warrior's cape. Oh, I really, really like that effect on these minis. I would use these minis as normal monsters rather than waiting around to use them in this expansion. Finally, we've got green dice. The camera's actually picking these up as bluer than they are in real life. They are greener. Hold on. There we go. That's pretty close to what they are. Yeah, they're just ever so slightly more green to my eye than they are blue. So like 51% green, if that makes any sense, which of course it doesn't. Again, this is a small box format expansion, and all of the miniatures in here are the exact same ones that came with Prophecy of Telor, except we do not get another gargoyle. Instead, we get the Bard, the Orc Bard. And once again, this hero has this strange speckled glitteriness about him right in the material compared to the original Mythic tier Bard. The difference is very notable, and you're going to note the difference in the material between your hero playing the Bard and all of the other heroes. Out come the minis. The Orc Bard, as well as the enemy orcs and the mummies, the Dread Warriors, the skeletons, all alternate sculpts that you won't find in the vanilla game system, the mummies, the goblins, the zombies, and the abominations are all here. Yeah, so instead of the extra gargoyle sculpt, like in Prophecy of Telor, you get an extra abomination with this expansion. And then, of course, what is essentially the female version of the Dread Sorcerer, which can be used in the expansion as the Spirit Queen Nalath. Okay, we're going to compare the quest books, but first we're going to compare the cards. New cards on the right this time, old cards on the left. You can see that they zoomed out the art in the card on the right. This was the subject of debate for some time. I thought it wasn't too hard to suss out myself, but we do have clarification now in the changing of the words on the back of the card. The old card reading, "You are the bard. Your spirit and songs inspire and invigorate your allies. You prefer to stay light on your feet. So when you are wearing non-metal armor and not carrying a shield, you have one extra defend die." Versus the new text, which is, "You are the bard. Your spirit and songs inspire and invigorate your allies. You prefer to stay light on your feet. So when you are wearing non-metal armor and not carrying a shield, you roll one additional defend die." I don't know. For some people, the extra versus additional was a big eye-opener. I don't get. Artwork on the back of the cards is pretty much exactly the same. There might be a slight zooming in on it. Old lullaby on the left, new lullaby on the right. And it was necessary to update the text on the card since there are undead monsters who have 0 mind points that this spell will not work against. And that's valid, but there will continue to be 0 mind point monsters introduced in future expansions, and that should be reflected in the wordage on this card. So now, instead of having no effect on zombies, mummies, or skeletons, this has no effect on targets with 0 mind points, as it should be. The price for the rapier is the exact same. The wordage is just a little different. The text for Inspiring Tale has actually been shortened. Healing Song, old on the left, new on the right. And now the equipment cards, which include Potion of Battle, Potion of Dexterity, Potion of Restoration, and the Venom Antidote. And the artifact cards, Spell Scroll Courage, Spell Scroll Fire of Wrath, Spell Scroll Tempest, Dust of Disappearance, Anti-Poison Quill, and Rabbit Boots. As well as the super exclusive and ultra rare HeroQuest Spirit Queen's Torment Quest Pack card, made in China. Sell it on eBay, I guess. Old quest book on the left, new quest book on the right. Let's open them up and examine. It is funny to me and a bit strange that the quest that was written by Teo Sabadia has less editing than the quest that was written by Stephen Baker. For the notes on how to play, they simply got rid of the bullet points and included the notes on italicization. Fun! The font is smaller in the preamble story, and the text is easier to read, in my opinion. The very end of the text in the intro is also just slightly different, and just super minor differences. And again, this is not intended to be an all-conclusive comparison between the old and the new or anything like that, just things that I'm observing while I'm flipping through some of the pages. The new quests are, just like Prophecy of Telor, easier to read ever so slightly. We have little quality of life changes for your eyeballs. I mean, just look at this. Here's the old one. And while that's perfectly readable to most of us veterans, this new one is just absolutely more friendly. Really encloses everything, allows you to find things at a glance. Maybe not a big deal for veteran Zargons and Morkars who set up their quests, but definitely nice for new Zargons. Quest 7 includes the Drowned Temple, and the quest note reads, "With the exception of Room D, all creatures the heroes encounter are undead wearing the uniform of Zargon's troops. These undead were killed by the spirits of the temple." Now, you don't exactly have enough minis to represent all of the enemies in this quest with your new additions. You still can, of course, represent these minis with variations of that mini. So like where you step into this room and you've got 2 Dread Warriors, they would be considered undead because of the quest notes, but you only have the 1 Dread Warrior sculpt that came with this expansion to kind of denote that they're undead. If you get both of these expansions, which I know many of you have, you could of course use 1 blue and 1 orange Dread Warrior, but that's not really addressing the problem that some people have pointed out, that there's not enough monsters in these new sculpts to represent those monsters that have these special properties about them presented in these quests. Now, you don't have to use special sculpts at all. You can just use the game system monsters and be perfectly fine, because there are very few instances where you're actually going to be outnumbering your stock of monsters. But in the instances where you are going to be outnumbering your stock of monsters, you will have a bit of an unevenness. You'll have your skeletons from the base game system represented in this quest, and then you'll have a couple of the skeletons from this expansion, and it won't really make any difference what material they're made out of or what sculpt you're using. They'll just be different for no reason on the map. So that might be a point of contention for some people. For others, not a big deal, but maybe worth pointing out. Once again, the artifact references in the old version versus the new, and we have a lot more on our list of artifacts that were in this expansion. So that was definitely necessary to add to the end. Brave heroes, thank you so much for watching my video on the unboxing, overview, and comparison of the brand new expansions Spirit Queen's Torment and Prophecy of Telor, brand new to the world now. Before we go, I'll just have one more shot of all of the new sculpts versus their old classic white, gray, and green versions for your enjoyment. Bye for now. No, I still don't have the stupid Dread Veil dice.